Hey everyone, Joe Waxman here. And today I want to look at the chart of Jordan Peterson. He's the Canadian, he's a psychologist. Guys, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. I'm sure you've heard of him speak. He's a popular intellectual and has all sorts of ideas, some good, some maybe, depending on who you are, not so good. I generally like him. I'm not, crazy about him, but I think he's generally a very smart, well-spoken individual. So this is let me pull up his Wikipedia just to sorry about that. So he actually has, so his education is that he got 2 bachelors. One is actually in political science, the other is in psychology, and then a PhD in psychology, and then he taught a bunch, and he did research in Harvard, and then taught in the University of Toronto, I believe. And then he started making videos, and that's where he became famous, I believe. All right. And he got into trouble. He's constantly, he's making some enemies here and there with things he says. But he's very popular. He's by many people say he's the most influential intellectual in America today, or in the West, I guess. So he deleted his Patreon account in public protest because they banned another creator. So he's very much against the tyranny, the big tech tyranny, which most of us are, unless you're a teeny brain person. Sorry, I'm just looking for interesting points. He was suspended on Twitter for hateful conduct policy after posting a tweet misgendering. And I'm just going to read from this just so I'm not getting another strike for anything. After posting a tweet misgendering and dead naming transgender actor Elliot Page, he would be required to delete the tweet in order to restore his account. He said he would rather die than do. I love that when people are like, I would rather die than do this, because I feel the same. There's some things that are worse than death. It's going to be different for each person, but there are things that are worse than death. Definitely. YouTube has demonetized 2 of Peterson's videos. One about Twitter suspension. Gender affirming care was Nazi medical experiment level wrong. Yeah, so he's very much against that. And then he signed a news deal with Daily Wire for distribution, and he talks about religion as well, the Bible, and politics, social issues, political correctness, postmodern identity politics, gender and gender expression. He came out against a bill C-16. So he's very political and religious and intellectual, right? And saying it fell under compelled speech. He stated that he would not use the preferred gender pronouns of students and faculty, saying it fell under compelled speech, and announced his objection, blah, blah, gender identity or express. So all that, I mean, you can fill in the blanks. I don't want to dwell too much on it. All right, let's just go back to the astrology. Okay. Very, very intellectual, right? Okay, so sun in Gemini, conjunct Mercury in Gemini, retrograde. Mercury is in domicile here in Gemini. So we can right away, we can tell, we can see, okay, this guy is very intellectual, very Geminian, right? Unlike, and then there's different kinds of Geminis depending on the Mercury, because obviously Gemini is ruled by Mercury. So if Mercury is going to be in one of three positions in the Gemini, where it matters. It matters in the Mercury ruled signs. So either in Gemini or in Virgo, looking for Mercury, where Mercury is very important. And there's three variations. One is Mercury, Sun in Gemini, Mercury in Taurus. That's where mine is. That's also where Kanye's is. That's more of an artistic combination. This is more of an intellectual one, where Mercury is in Gemini, and that's probably the best one for the intellect, for the full expression of Gemini, right? And then obviously if Mercury is in Cancer, this is a much more soft spoken, caring, emotional type Gemini. In any case, he's very intellectual, right? And not only intellectual, but when Mercury is retrograde, then they're going to be more disagreeable. Mercury retrograde people are always more disagreeable. They can't help it. And it can be annoying sometimes if you want people to like support your whatever, just go along and, kind of be supportive. Mercury and Gemini might not be supportive unless they really are supportive. Like their default setting is to kind of disagree with things and to find faults and to find, they're going against the grain. Especially because Mercury rules Gemini. So that's very important to consider. That's, and this is also in the second house. So it's dealing with speech, right? Speech and expression, because Gemini is generally like associated with the third house, right? And it deals with similar things, the intellect. And so here he's becoming a very good, powerful speaker. His ego, his intellect, his, the dispositor of the sun's in good domicile in Gemini. So like, speaking, right? And disagreeable speaking against the grain, against the norm, against the status quo, right? Teaching, knowledge as well, second house, right? So we know that he's going to be a strong speaker, very intellectual speaker, very knowledgeable. And that's further reinforced by this grand air trine. People with grand air trines, I mean, if it's a good one, a strong one within the degrees and the strong planets involved, are brilliant, right? So Moon in Libra, that's 1 degree from Mercury, very strong. And then Saturn in Aquarius with South Node, conjunct South Node. And the South Node is going to give him even more skill, adeptness, just not kind of because it's what we've already learned from the past. So he's bringing in all these skills. Saturn's in Aquarius, where it rules Aquarius, clearly in the 10th house, right? 10th whole sign, 10th quadrant, very prominent for Saturn. Shows real strong authority, respect, leadership, that people will naturally kind of consider him an authority, a leader, right? Especially a thought leader with this grand trine, right? And that is just coming so natural to him because of the South Node. It's inherent. From a young age, he could rise. And that was obvious if you hear some of the people, like if you read through the Wikipedia, you can read some quotes that other people would say about him. And he was just, it was just natural for him to rise to the top of the intellectual world and academia and things like that. He wrote 3 books and authored like hundreds of academic papers, widely quoted. I mean, the guy is a serious intellect. There are other things that I could say that maybe are less developed, which I'll get to. But as far as intellectual prowess goes, I mean, he's really at the top of his league right now, among those who are living, because of this grand air trine and the placement here. Moon is in Libra in the 6th house, and that's not so good for health, but it makes him very competitive, hardworking, it does indicate potential health issues, which he has health issues, and I'll get to that. But Moon in Libra is very intellectual. It is an air sign, obviously, and it's also very social, but academic, fair-minded, balanced, peaceful, but very Libra is very brilliant as well in its Libran way. And the trine to the Mercury shows that he can equally express and convey his feelings, his sentiments, what he feels, his heart, the emotions. And like I already said, this Saturn really is prominent for leadership. A good Saturn in the 10th house will make a really strong, long-lasting career that brings a lot of authority and respect and leadership, right? So that's very strong here. Moon is ruling the 4th house, and there's actually a mutual reception between Venus and Moon. And that's interesting because, well, this is the 3rd whole sign house. We could say 3rd and 6th, but it's also 4th because of the IC being right here. So home and health, so he's moved a lot for work. I mean, we could look at this as job, career. He's moved around for work, and the 4th house is home, but also for health. He had some health issues in which he had to move to Russia and then Serbia for treatment, which is really interesting, right? But he had like severe pneumonia, and let me just pull up the Wikipedia just so we can be clear about it. Severe autoimmune reaction to food. That sounds kind of vague. I'm sure there's a lot more going on than that. You don't just develop an autoimmune reaction to food. Autoimmune reactions are generally, like, I'm no expert, but I know jabs, injections can cause that. Being careful with what I say here. But it's more than just, you don't just eat food and eat, one time and develop an auto. It's something deeper than that, right? And he was prescribed a benzodiazepine, clonazepam, which is no doubt poison, as are pretty much most, if not all, pharmaceutical drugs. There might be a few exceptions. I'm not saying they're not, but most is poison. He went on a diet consisting of only meat and some vegetables, and then later, because his daughter promoted it to him, and which is crazy. I mean, first of all, there's no way we could all eat a diet of only meat, because it's completely unsustainable, and we never have in the past. We've never been like that. It's anyway. I mean, that's a long tangent, but we are grain eaters. Humanity has reared itself on grains, that cooked grains. That is why we've been able to establish civilizations instead of being nomads. If you're a hunter-gatherer, you have to be nomadic, which you can't farm, and you can't be stable, and therefore you can't develop civilization. Therefore, you're not modern. You're a primitive nomad, right? Modernization came from cooked grain, because we could farm the grain and therefore build towns and villages and cities, and also farm animals, and therefore build up civilization and build our brain. Our brain runs on carbohydrates, not protein. So we actually burn carbohydrates through the thinking process. Therefore, we need a sustained carbohydrate, long-lasting carbohydrate, which is cooked grain. I mean, that's just, it's incredibly simple. Like, there's really no mystery about it, even though people try and obfuscate that simple fact. But history has proven it again and again, everywhere around the world, that humanity has always reared itself on grain, on also modern, civilizations that have grown and developed. Obviously, it's different in the far north. We're not talking about the Eskimos or anything. Just wanted to put that in there. This all meat stuff is nonsense. It's just, there's no rationale for it. It doesn't make sense in any way. So and this is interesting. So in an attempt to control the severe depression, take note of that, and effects on autoimmune disorder, including psoriasis and uveitis. I don't even know what this is. Inflammation of the uvea lies between the inner retina, so it's the eye. Okay. So skin and eyes and autoimmune immunity. He stopped eating vegetables, all containing only beef, salt, and water. That's not a healthy diet. And then increase the deal with anxiety. That's a typical, especially Gemini thing, but also Virgo, Mercury in general. His wife got cancer. And his daughter's seriously ill too, by the way. Michaela's daughter, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, hip and ankle replacement. That's huge. 17 years old. Chronic fatigue and depression. And that's where she got her diet. His wife got kidney cancer. All right. And then, so he had to move around for treatment. Okay. Let's go back. All right, so we know there's 6th house issues. Moon, I think, relates more to the eyes. So Moon in Libra here in the 6th house, but also Neptune in Scorpio. I think that's still bringing in the 6th house. And Neptune in the 6th house brings in on hidden illnesses. So like when we're talking about anxiety or autoimmune issues, things of that nature. I think that is pertaining to that. As far as skin disease, that's still autoimmune. So yeah. I think, and that's probably what the autoimmune disease is probably referring to. So yeah, 6th house issues. Also Pluto in the 5th for his daughter. And Pluto is opposite Chiron by 3 degrees, even wider Jupiter, but more Chiron. So definitely there's going to be issues with one of his kids. And then his partner getting cancer, right? We look to Mars. Mars is in poor dignity in Taurus, opposite Neptune here in the 6th. So definitely issues there with health and dignity. And there's more to this. Obviously, if the 7th house Lord is not in good dignity, then you can attract people who are not in good dignity. And I don't know much about his wife other than I don't know anything except that she developed kidney cancer. But also, he was a clinical psychologist and he saw patients. So that's where you get that from. Like people with debilitated or weak 7th houses, or in detriment or debilitated 7th house lords, depending on where it is. Here it's in the 1st house, so he's attracting people with less integrity to him. That means counselor. You understand why that's so? Because like he's helping people who are weaker than him, right? So it could be like a doctor or counselor, or anyone who's like attracts people who are sick or weak or in some way needs help. That's the combination. Weak 7th house Lord, weak in detriment or debility, right? It's like that. Obviously, depending on where it is, right? In any case, like if a planet is debilitated in the 7th house, or the 7th house Lord, obviously here, in the 1st house, then it's that. That's what it means. This is the 12th first. So like, it's attracting to him, but also bringing in the psychology, because of the 12th house, the hidden secrets, right? So it's a combination of those two things. And there's also this huge T-square here, which is really interesting. This South Node Saturn is getting a lot of attention because it's part of the grand air trine and part of this grand fixed square. let's see, Mars square Saturn can represent physicality that is extreme somehow. Extreme physicality, adventure, kind of like it could be like fighting, or it could be just some very extreme, something extremely physical. Somebody who works out a lot. I don't know. It didn't say anything about like he looks thin, so I wonder if he like does some extreme, maybe not extreme, but maybe he runs or something, or goes to the gym. I don't know. But it represents some sort of physicality. This Mars, but it's also tied into Neptune, and so Mars is ruling the 7th house and the 12th house. So this deals with his relationships. Definitely, at least we could say there's conflict with his career and his relationships, right? And there's conflict in general. Neptune can be hidden things, but also media, like film, photography, video, anything creative, and behind the scenes creative that involves like that kind of, like movie, cinema, being in being on the screen. Sorry, I have a little bit of a cough. I ate something that weakened my immunity, and now I have like a little bit of a cold, I guess. But yeah, that's part. I have to pause this. Sorry about that. I had to go get some water. Share my screen again. All right, where were we? Let's see. Yeah, so this T square, this T square is part of his conflicts. He's getting into a lot of conflicts, especially with his career, relating to career and others. That's the Mars Saturn square. Also Neptune, involving the creative aspect of it, right? And the videos and the podcasts and all that. Also, Jupiter is square Mercury here, and this is probably, well, Jupiter is conjunct Chiron. Oh, by the way, Chiron is about to go retro station one day, so it's almost stationary, so it's very slow. So Chiron here is significant, and Chiron is a scientific planet, right? Chiron deals with wounds and rejection and all that, but when it's in good dignity, and this is generally in good dignity because it's boosted by Jupiter, however, it does have an opposition to Pluto, so it does have a negative aspect, but generally Jupiter, Chiron are here in the 11th house of hopes, wishes, dreams, groups, networks. So he's going to do well in groups and networks. However, and especially with science type stuff, right? That's one of the things Chiron relates to. However, there will be troubles related to, let's see, well, Jupiter square Mercury, and so I guess that relates to his depression, because Jupiter should not be depressed. Jupiter in Pisces should not be depressed, because, or at least not very much, not very often, less so than a poor his Jupiter is in really good dignity. So Yeah, I think that's the Chiron and Pluto influence, and then the square to Mercury. Jupiter is ruling the 8th house, so that actually, if the 8th house lord is in good dignity, that extends longevity and protects the person from crisis. Which it is. 11th house is good. That's for career success and income and groups, networks, popularity. So he's very popular, obviously, and then Jupiter helps with that and helps with the group network activity, and also internet, 11th house, right? Because it's that networking. And let's see, Mercury is ruling the 2nd and 5th house. So, that's generally good, like knowledge, education, entertainment, speaking, being on stage, all that. So these are both in good dignity, the Mercury and Jupiter, but there's some issue here. Some tension, some conflict, and that he's always getting into conflict. And that when he speaks, he's not only, retrograde Mercury going against the grain, he's also bringing in religious elements and being argumentative. He can't help it. He's just going to buck the system, go against the norm, go against the grain, speak out. And that's a huge part of what makes him so popular. This is really strong trine here to Neptune and Scorpio. So, and that's 6th, 7th house. But that's just going to bring in the, even more like even more of an expanded view, bringing his mind into scorpionic things as well. I'm sure he could talk at length about occultism, occult influences, but religion, spirituality, those things are on his radar, and he does speak about them at length, and this is also making him very popular. Right. His relationships, that's the weakest part. Like his one-on-one relationships are I don't know anything about his wife really, but that's difficult. And then, but a lot of his relationships are that counselor or therapy type nature where he's helping people. I don't know if he still does that, but at least he did. Right. And he's getting into a lot of conflict. But South Node in the 10th shows early rise to success in career. North Node in Leo is interesting because it's in the 4th house, 4th whole sign house, 4th quadrant. So this indicates that he's moving into home, land, real estate, brick and mortar, buildings, but also representing the people and politics. And I think that's really what it means, because it's disposited by Sun in the 2nd house. So he's speaking about the homeland. And I think people feel like he does represent them well, and that's why they like him. That's why he's popular. He speaks out about politics, the bills, the cultural Marxism, all that stuff. And I think that's where he's really strong. He's going to gain a lot of notoriety with that because of Leo. Leo brings fame, attention, center stage, right? All that. So that's very prominent. Uranus is lightly square the ascendant, but that's making him even more rebellious, right? I mean, the guy really likes to buck the system. That's why he's like, I'd rather die than delete my tweet. Yeah, that's pretty strong, right? So he's very rebellious. He's going against the grain. He's got this massive fixed grand cross, which shows just incredible stubbornness, right? It's just because it's fixed. So it's like, and a lot of these fighters have Mars and Taurus, because it's just the aggressive stick in the mud. It just won't move, right? And of course, society is always moving. It's very progressive, wanting to push all its agendas. And the Mars and Taurus is like, no, because Mars is the initiation, the aggression, the masculine, it's the army, the soldier, the fighter, the warrior. And in Taurus, it's just like, no, we're not doing that. No. So he's, he is a fighter and a huge intellect, right? That's all very obvious. Rebel. Venus is in the fourth house, so his home life is quite good though. Venus in Cancer. That's nice. It's not exalted, but it does have a mutual reception with Moon, so it's it's getting the Libra influence, and that's quite good. It's sextile the ascendant in Taurus, and that's also really good because it rules Taurus. So it's getting some good influence here from Libra and Taurus. So his home life, his early childhood, his parents, that's all quite good, right? And third house, IC is in the third whole sign house, so that is activating his intellect even more. So, right. Let's see what else. So Neptune in the fifth for his children, the sick child, and also the Chiron, Jupiter, depression. That's pretty much it. Let's check his draconic chart. Moon in Gemini, just first house, adding to the Gemini influence. Exalted Saturn at 0 degrees Libra, and fifth house, moving into the sixth, but fifth, sixth. And sixth house Saturn generally is very hardworking, and I think Saturn does quite well in the sixth. Actually, can indicate health issues as well, but if it's in good dignity, much less so. And then Jupiter and Chiron are here in the sixth, so that further adds to health issues, and especially with Chiron. Jupiter might protect it somewhat, but with Scorpio, less so. Scorpio is going to kind of suck out some of the goodness of Jupiter. Mars in Capricorn in conjuncting the ninth house cusp. So that's interesting. Shows a lot of adventurous, because Mars in the ninth house will more indicate somebody who really likes to travel and go on adventures, things like that. So he likes to travel and go on adventures. Sun in Aquarius exactly conjunct the south node and Saturn by 1 degree. That's going to help us. That's going to boost his career a lot. Also with Mercury here, right? That's excellent for fame, notoriety, attention on the public stage. Exalted, his draconic chart's pretty strong. A lot of strong planets in both his natal and draconic. Exalted Venus here, 2 degrees from Jupiter, so that is further going to enhance his career success and popularity, wealth, income, and influence in social networks, including the internet and all that. All right, these aren't really doing much here. So you can see, again, astrology is so right on. It just makes so much sense, pretty much every time. He's got this grand air trine, which perfectly describes his genius, along with Mercury and Sun in Gemini, second house. But then he's very conflictual, right? He's got all these squares. He's always arguing. He's bringing conflict. He's rebelling and all that. And it wouldn't surprise me if he ran for some sort of public office at some point, actually. Either that, or he could buy land and start his own community and things of that nature. Or both, some combination of that. But at the very least, he's going to represent the people. That's fourth house, homeland, people of the homeland, right? Whatever his homeland is. I think it's just generally the West, because he's lived in America as well as Canada. He's lived in Europe too, right? Also, I guess you could say that it would be Mars in the 12th house, you know, Mars being the physical action and 12th house being foreign lands. You know, but what else? I think that's it. We covered most of it. Right. Yeah. That's Jordan Peterson generally. Super intellect, super intellect. Oh, what I wanted to say about his religious views is that even though he has Jupiter in Pisces, which is, you know, very spiritual, very religious minded, very like high thinking, at least according to Wikipedia, it's religion. I suppose so. He considers himself Christian. When asked if he believes in God, Peterson responded, "I think the proper response to that is no, but I'm afraid he might exist." So that's not a very, in my opinion, that's not a very well developed understanding of God. And just briefly, I'll tell you why. Because the correct answer to that, or at least according to me, right? Not the, but if somebody asks you if you believe in God, that's not even the right question. The right question is, how do you understand God? That's much more appropriate and accurate and telling, because God doesn't, whether you believe in God or not doesn't really matter, because God doesn't need, does the sun need our belief in order for it to exist? Whether we believe in God or not, it's like if the belief in God, if God is dependent on our belief, then that means we're creating God with our belief system, right? But God has to exist whether we believe in it or not, just like everything else exists whether we believe it or not, everything that's real, right? So belief is not the right question. It's how do you understand God? And maybe maybe some people have no real understanding of God, but other people have a very well developed understanding of God. So it's much more important to say, what is God, rather than do I believe in God or not? Because that's just fantasy. That doesn't tell you anything. It just that's just like, is somebody more religious minded or not religious minded? But who cares? Like, are they, you know, fantasy oriented? They believe in magical creations and whatnot, or not? It's much more important to think about what is God. How do I understand God? Than do I believe in God or not? Right. And so even though he has Jupiter in Pisces, he still can't get to that realization of God, that what is God? How do I understand God? Right? Rather than do I believe in God, which is nonsense. That's just not, it's not a valid question. It's not a good question. It's a cliche, doesn't mean anything, doesn't tell you anything important anyway. And it's not a validation of God. Whether everyone in the world believes in God or nobody in the world believes in God, it has no bearing on what God is or whether God exists or not. I mean, it's not a matter of God, if God exists. It's how do we perceive God? Because that's there can always be a God if we just lend ourselves to that thought process. Well, what is God? Maybe for some people it's a very limited something, but you know, if we exist, then God has to exist, because it's just how you understand that. In any case, hopefully some of you can grasp what I'm getting at, but maybe not. So, all right, that's it for Jordan Peterson. Guys, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Book a reading with me. You can find my website at macroastrology.com, or email me directly at macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com. Leave a comment if you like, say something, whatever. If you want me to do any specific reading, go for it, ask me. I can't guarantee you that I will do it, but I might if I think it's a good suggestion. All right, thanks, bye.